Imagine waking up to the news that the government might send you $2,000, not as a loan, not as a refund, but as your share of America's trade profits. Sounds unbelievable, right? Yet that's exactly what former President Donald Trump has promised. A proposal that could send $2,000 to millions of Americans. He's calling it a tariff dividend, and according to his team, it's meant to give back what he believes foreign nations have paid into America's economy through tariffs. But here's the question everyone is asking. Who actually qualifies for this money? And what happens next? In today's episode, we'll break it all down, fact by fact, to help you understand where this idea came from, who might benefit, and whether you should expect a check, a tax break, or just another campaign promise. Let's dive in. First, let's start with what happened. Earlier this week, Trump announced a new initiative he calls the American Dividend. In a statement shared online and echoed across news outlets, he said that revenue from tariffs on imported goods could be used to fund direct payments of at least $2,000 per person, not including high-income people, in his words. On the surface, it sounds like a simple patriotic gesture. America taxes foreign products, collects money from those tariffs, and then gives part of that revenue back to its citizens. But behind that simplicity lies a very complex set of questions. How much money do tariffs actually generate? Who decides who gets the payout? And can the government legally distribute those funds without Congress approving a new stimulus law? To answer these questions, we first need to understand what tariffs are. A tariff is basically a tax on imported goods, anything that comes into the United States from another country. When an American company imports steel, electronics, or clothing, it pays a fee to the government. That money goes into the US Treasury. The idea is to make imported goods more expensive, which in theory encourages companies to buy or produce domestically. During Trump's presidency, tariffs were a central part of his America First trade policy. They targeted countries like China, Mexico, and Canada, raising billions of dollars in new revenue. Now, Trump is proposing that some of that revenue should go back to the American people, as a kind of national reward for enduring the higher prices those tariffs created. And yes, that's an important detail. Tariffs don't actually make foreign countries pay more. Companies pass those costs down to consumers. That means every time you buy a TV, a washing machine, or even a smartphone made overseas, part of that price is the tariff. So in a strange way, this $2,000 plan is like giving Americans back a portion of the money they've already paid through higher prices. It's an appealing message. You've paid enough. Now you get something back. But does the math work? Let's look at the numbers. According to Treasury data, the United States collected roughly $195 billion in import tariffs over the past year. That's a lot of money, but not nearly enough to send $2,000 to every adult American. There are about 150 million adults in the US who might qualify, depending on the income limits. Multiply that by $2,000 and you get around $300 billion. In other words, even if every dollar of tariff revenue were redirected, it still wouldn't fully cover the plan. That raises a bigger question. Would the government borrow the difference? Would it raise other taxes? Or would it limit the payout to a smaller group, say middle-class and low-income households? Trump's announcement specifically said the payments would exclude high-income people, but he didn't define that term. In the past, stimulus checks were phased out at incomes above $75,000 for individuals and $150,000 for couples. If Trump's plan follows a similar model, roughly two-thirds of American households could qualify. That's around 60% of the population, or more than 150 million people. That's why headlines across the country are calling this proposal a potential new round of checks. But it's not exactly a stimulus in the traditional sense. It's a dividend, at least in name. and the difference matters. A stimulus check is meant to boost spending during a crisis. A dividend, on the other hand, is meant to distribute profit, in this case, profit from tariffs. It's a subtle but powerful difference. Calling it a dividend makes it sound sustainable, even earned. It's not government aid. It's your share of America's economic gains. That framing is smart politics, especially for a candidate who built his brand on business success and fairness. It connects emotionally with people who feel left behind by globalization and rising costs. It says, you've been paying more, now it's your turn to benefit. But emotion aside, let's look at the practical side. How would this actually work? There are two main possibilities. The first is the simplest: direct payments. The government could send checks or direct deposits to qualified Americans using IRS data, just like the COVID-era stimulus checks. This would be fast and highly visible. People would see the money and feel the impact. The second possibility is a tax rebate. Instead of sending cash, the government could apply the dividend as a credit on your annual tax return. That would be cheaper to administer, but slower to reach your wallet. It's also possible that the dividend could come in the form of targeted tax relief. For example, removing taxes on tips, overtime pay, or Social Security income. That would help working Americans and retirees in different ways. Each option has pros and cons, and right now, none of them have been confirmed. That's because the proposal doesn't yet exist as an official policy. There's no signed executive order, no bill in Congress, and no official timeline. For now, it's a campaign promise, but one that's getting serious attention. Financial news outlets like Business Insider, MarketWatch, and ABC News have all analyzed the plan, and most experts agree on two things. It's creative, but it's not yet feasible. Still, ideas like this often start as headlines before they become laws. Remember the first stimulus checks during COVID? Those began as proposals that few believed would happen, until they did. Now let's focus on the core question of today's video. Who actually qualifies? If Trump's team follows the same model as past payments, here's what it might look like. Single filers with income under $75,000 would likely qualify for the full $2,000. Married couples with income under $150,000 would qualify for $4,000 combined. Those earning above that would see their benefit reduced, phasing out completely around $100,000 for singles and $200,000 for couples. Again, this is speculation, but it's based on prior policy. Now, what about retirees and Social Security recipients? That's a key question for millions of seniors. Historically, Social Security beneficiaries received the stimulus checks during COVID, even if they didn't file taxes, as long as they had a valid Social Security number and direct deposit information with the government. If this new plan is structured similarly, retirees could qualify automatically. But because this is tied to tariffs and not emergency relief, it's possible the distribution would be limited to taxpayers who actively contribute or file returns. Until the Treasury or Congress issues specific guidance, we can't say for sure. And that uncertainty is exactly why videos like this matter. Now, let's step back for a moment. Why propose this now? Politically, the timing makes sense. America is heading into an election cycle where economic pressure remains the top concern. Inflation, housing costs, and grocery bills have all risen faster than wages for years. For millions of families, an extra $2,000 sounds like real relief. Trump's team knows that, and by framing it as a dividend from tariffs, they turn a controversial policy into a populist advantage. It shifts the conversation from tariffs cause inflation to tariffs pay you back. It's clever, simple, and emotionally powerful. But the question remains, can the math hold up? Let's do a quick thought experiment. If the government collects $195 billion in tariffs and wants to pay $2,000 to 150 million people, it's about $300 billion total. That's a gap of $105 billion. To cover that, either new tariffs would need to be introduced or the government would have to borrow more money, both of which could affect inflation. Economists warn that raising tariffs to generate more revenue might backfire by increasing prices on imported goods. That means the same Americans who receive the $2,000 could end up paying more at the store. It's a loop, one that makes great headlines, but tricky economics. Still, let's give credit where it's due. The idea speaks directly to a very real frustration among Americans. People are tired of feeling that their hard work doesn't translate into real improvement. They see corporations making record profits, government spending billions abroad, and yet their own savings shrinking. A $2,000 payment feels like recognition, a way of saying, you matter too. Whether or not it's feasible, that emotional connection explains why this story has spread so quickly. So where does it stand legally? Can a president really send out such payments without Congress? The short answer, not easily. Tariff revenue technically belongs to the Treasury, and spending that money requires authorization. That means either Congress would need to pass a law allowing these dividends, or the administration would need to find a legal workaround, perhaps framing it as a rebate or tax adjustment. Either way, expect court challenges. Even supporters admit this plan would take months, maybe a year to implement. So if you're wondering when the money might arrive, the honest answer is not anytime soon. Let's talk about the potential benefits if it did happen. For middle and lower income Americans, $2,000 could have a noticeable impact. It could help pay off credit card debt, catch up on rent, or provide a cushion against rising prices. Economists call this a short-term multiplier, the idea that putting money directly into consumers' hands stimulates spending and supports small businesses. For seniors or those on fixed incomes, it could mean buying medications or home essentials without stress. So yes, the benefit is real, even if temporary. However, we can't ignore the potential downsides. The same injection of cash could fuel demand and push prices higher. It could also add pressure to the national debt, which already exceeds $35 trillion. Some analysts warn that combining high tariffs with new cash payouts could create a feedback loop. Higher import costs lead to inflation, which triggers more government payouts, which increases debt, and so on. The result could be another inflation wave like the one after 2021's stimulus checks. That's why many economists are calling for balance. Relief for households, but fiscal responsibility to avoid long-term harm. Now, let's bring this down to the individual level, to you. If you're watching this, you're probably asking, what can I do to prepare? First, make sure your tax information is up to date. In previous rounds of payments, people who hadn't filed recent tax returns often experienced delays or missed checks entirely. Second, ensure your direct deposit information with the IRS or Social Security Administration is correct. That's how funds are usually distributed. Third, stay skeptical of online claims. Whenever government payments are announced, scammers rush in with fake registration sites. Remember, you never have to pay or sign up for a government payment. If it's real, it'll come automatically. Another practical step. Stay informed through trusted sources, the Treasury Department, IRS.gov, or credible financial outlets like AP, CNBC, or MarketWatch. Avoid social media rumors promising exact dates or early access. Those are usually scams. And if you have older family members who might fall for such posts, share this video with them. It might save them from a mistake. At this point, let's pause for a moment of perspective. Whether or not this plan happens, it reveals something deeper about America today. We are a country where the idea of direct payments has become part of our political vocabulary. 20 years ago, the thought of the government sending checks to citizens outside a crisis would have been unthinkable. Today, it's mainstream. It shows how the relationship between government and people is evolving, from indirect policies to direct transactions. That shift reflects not just economics, but emotion. The feeling that help should come straight to you, not through complicated programs or corporate trickle-down. So what's next? Over the coming months, you can expect continued discussion in Washington about how to structure this plan, if it advances at all. There will be debates over fairness. Should everyone get the same amount, or should it be income-based? There will be questions about legality. Can tariff revenue be repurposed this way? And there will be the inevitable politics. Is this genuine relief, or just election season marketing? My advice is simple. Don't get swept up by the noise. Look at the details, not the slogans. Before we wrap up, let's revisit our central question. Who qualifies for Trump's $2,000 payout? Based on what we know today, the most likely qualifiers would be U.S. citizens and legal residents who filed recent tax returns, individuals earning below roughly $75,000 per year, couples earning below roughly $150,000 combined, possibly retirees and Social Security recipients, if the plan includes them. Those above those thresholds would likely see reduced or no payments. Again, these details aren't confirmed, but they're consistent with prior frameworks. Now, let's add one more dimension: fairness between generations. Younger workers might see this as a short-term benefit, but older Americans, especially retirees, may feel it's a partial correction for years of rising costs. Many seniors have seen their purchasing power eroded by inflation, even after annual COLA increases. So if this plan includes them, it could restore some balance. On the other hand, if they're excluded, as some fear, it could deepen generational frustration. The same is true for working families versus single adults. That's why clear guidelines will be essential. As we near the end of this discussion, let's zoom out again. What does this tell us about the broader American economy? It tells us that people are still hungry for stability and fairness. It tells us that political leaders, regardless of party, are recognizing that direct, visible relief is one of the most effective ways to reach voters. And it tells us that America's financial conversation is shifting from how do we grow GDP to how do we make that growth felt at the kitchen table. That's a profound change, and it's one that's shaping every major policy debate right now. To close, let me leave you with 3 key takeaways. First, Trump's $2,000 payout proposal is real in the sense that it's been publicly announced, but not real in the sense of being implemented. It's an idea, not a law. Second, the math doesn't fully add up yet, which means either the amount, the eligibility, or the funding source will need to change. And third, while this plan might not materialize in its current form, it reflects a larger truth. Americans are demanding direct, tangible relief, and that trend is not going away. Whether it's tariffs today or tax credits tomorrow, the direction is clear. Government support is becoming more personalized and immediate. So, what should you do next? Keep informed, keep your financial records updated, and most importantly, stay realistic. Hope for help, but don't depend on it. Build your budget around what you have today, not what might come tomorrow. If the plan becomes real, it'll be a bonus. If it doesn't, you'll still be prepared. Thank you for watching, for thinking critically, and for caring about the facts. If this video helped you understand the issue more clearly, please take a second to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. It really helps us reach more Americans who need honest, calm explanations of what's happening with their money and their government. And let me know in the comments, if you did qualify for $2,000, how would you use it? Would you save it, invest it, or finally take care of that one thing you've been putting off? Until next time, stay informed, stay steady, and remember, knowledge is the most valuable dividend you can ever receive.